Have you ever wondered if one unexpected night could change your entire life? What if taking care of someone at their lowest moment led to finding your highest happiness? This is exactly what happened to Michael, *. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming tales of unexpected love and second chances. Michael Jenkins stared at his phone, the screen illuminating his exhausted face in the darkness of his car. It was nearly midnight, and his babysitter had just texted that his daughter Emma was finally asleep after asking for him 3 times during bedtime. He sighed, rubbing his temples as guilt washed over him. This was the 3rd company event this month that had kept him away from his 6-year-old daughter during the evening hours. Just a little longer, he whispered to himself, glancing at the upscale restaurant where the corporate anniversary celebration continued without him. As the newest senior account manager at Horizon Marketing, he couldn't afford to leave early, not when the executive team was present. Not when his boss, Victoria Reeves, had specifically asked him to attend. Michael had been raising Emma alone since his wife Sarah's death 3 years ago. Cancer had taken her quickly, leaving him to navigate single parenthood while trying to maintain his career. The promotion 6 months ago had been a blessing financially but a curse for his work-life balance. His phone buzzed again. A text from his colleague, Jason, *Vic is wasted. Someone needs to get her home. She's starting to talk about the Henderson account to anyone who'll listen, *. Michael groaned. Victoria Reeves, the formidable marketing director who rarely showed any vulnerability, was apparently 3 sheets to the wind. He'd only been working directly under her for half a year, but he knew enough about her reputation to understand this was unusual. Victoria was known for her composure, her razor-sharp mind, and her ability to maintain perfect control in any situation. He texted back, "Where are the other directors?" Jason, * Carlson left an hour ago. Matthews is equally drunk. She keeps refusing the car service, *. Michael hesitated, then typed, * I'll handle it. Where is she, *. 5 minutes later, Michael found Victoria leaning against a wall near the restrooms, her normally perfect posture compromised as she scrolled through her phone with unfocused eyes. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a sleek bun, had partially come loose, with strands framing her face. At 38, 4 years his senior, Victoria was striking even in this disheveled state. "Victoria," he approached cautiously. "It's Michael. I think it might be time to call it a night." She looked up, her eyes taking a moment to focus on him. Jenkins. Always the responsible one. She attempted to straighten herself but swayed slightly. "I'm perfectly fine." "Of course you are," he said diplomatically, "but the party's winding down. Let me call you a car service." "No," she said firmly, despite her inebriated state. "No car service. I don't want to be photographed or something. PR nightmare." She waved her hand dismissively, nearly losing her balance in the process. Michael instinctively reached out to steady her, catching her elbow. "Then let me drive you home. I was heading out anyway." Victoria studied his face with surprising intensity given her condition. "You have a daughter. Emma. You should go home to her." Michael was touched that she remembered his daughter's name. "She's with a sitter." "It's no trouble, really." After a moment's consideration, Victoria nodded. "Fine. But this isn't a regular thing, Jenkins. Exceptional circumstances." "Of course," he agreed, carefully guiding her through the restaurant, nodding politely to colleagues who pretended not to notice their boss's condition. The drive to Victoria's downtown apartment was mostly silent. She leaned her head against the window, occasionally murmuring something about quarterly projections or client retention rates. Michael found it both amusing and impressive that even drunk, her mind was still partially on work. When they arrived at her building, an upscale high-rise with a doorman, Michael realized she was in no condition to make it upstairs alone. "I'll walk you up," he said, not really asking permission. Victoria fumbled with her purse. 73rd floor. I mean, 7th. Apartment 701. The elevator ride was awkward, with Victoria leaning against the wall, her eyes closed. Michael couldn't help but notice how different she looked outside the office. More human. Vulnerable, even. He'd always seen her as somewhat intimidating, brilliant, demanding, and completely focused on results. This version of Victoria was unexpected. At her door, she struggled with the key until Michael gently took it from her hand. Her apartment was exactly what he would have expected, minimalist, elegant, with clean lines and a spectacular view of the city. Everything in perfect order. You should drink some water, Michael suggested, guiding her to the couch. In the kitchen, she murmured, kicking off her heels and curling her legs underneath her. The gesture was surprisingly girlish from someone who commanded boardrooms with iron authority. Michael found a glass and filled it with water, bringing it back to find Victoria with her eyes closed, her breathing steady. He placed the water on the coffee table and gently touched her shoulder. Victoria? You should drink this before you sleep. She opened her eyes, looking momentarily confused before recognition dawned. Jenkins. Still here. Drink some water. It'll help with tomorrow's headache. She complied, taking the glass and drinking half of it before setting it down. You're good at this. Taking care of people. I have a 6-year-old. It's not so different, he joked. To his surprise, she laughed, a genuine sound he'd rarely heard at work. Are you comparing me to a child, Jenkins? No, ma'am. Just the caretaking part. Michael, she said, suddenly serious. My name is Victoria when we're not at work. Victoria, he repeated, feeling strangely intimate saying her name. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, then frowned. I should change. Can't sleep in this. She gestured vaguely at her tailored suit. I should go, Michael said, suddenly aware of the impropriety of the situation. Victoria stood, wobbling slightly. Probably for the best. Thank you for this. Not very professional of me. It happens to everyone, he assured her, though he suspected it rarely happened to Victoria Reeves. Not to me, she said, confirming his thoughts. I'll see you Monday, Jenkins. Michael, he corrected with a small smile. Outside of work. She nodded, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. Michael. Monday. He left her apartment feeling strangely affected by the evening. Victoria Reeves was human after all, with vulnerabilities and a smile that transformed her face when genuine. He pushed the thought away as he drove home, focusing instead on the fact that he'd get to have breakfast with Emma in the morning. Michael woke to small hands patting his face and the delighted giggle of his daughter. Daddy! You're squishing Mr. Whiskers. He opened one eye to find Emma's stuffed cat partially trapped under his arm. My apologies to Mr. Whiskers, he said solemnly, handing the toy back to her. Emma, with her mother's curly brown hair and his green eyes, was already dressed in mismatched clothes of her own choosing, a polka-dot shirt and striped leggings in clashing colors. Did you dress yourself, pumpkin? She nodded proudly. I'm a big girl. Can we have pancakes? Absolutely, Michael said, swinging his legs out of bed. With chocolate chips? And bananas. Emma added, already racing toward the kitchen. As he made breakfast, Michael found his thoughts drifting to Victoria. He wondered if she was awake yet, how bad her hangover might be. The Victoria he knew from work would probably be up already, powering through the discomfort with sheer willpower, perhaps reviewing reports with a strong cup of coffee. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Victoria. Jason gave me your number. Thank you for last night. I apologize for the unprofessional behavior, asterisk. Michael stared at the message, surprised she'd reached out. Before he could respond, another text came through. Asterisk I owe you a coffee. Or something stronger, asterisk. He smiled, typing back, asterisk no apology necessary. Hope the headache isn't too bad, asterisk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again before her response came through. Asterisk nothing too aspirin and shame can't cure. Enjoy your weekend with Emma, asterisk. He paused, touched again that she remembered his daughter's name, before replying, asterisk will do. See you Monday, asterisk. Daddy, the pancake is burning. Emma's voice snapped him back to reality, and he quickly flipped the smoking pancake in the pan. Sorry, pumpkin. This one's for the pancake graveyard. Emma giggled as he dramatically tossed the burnt pancake into the trash. You were smiling at your phone. Was it a girlfriend? Michael nearly dropped the spatula. What? No. It was just work. Ms. Patty at school says her daddy smiles at his phone when his girlfriend texts, Emma said matter-of-factly, referring to one of her classmates. Well, this was my boss, Michael explained, pouring more batter into the pan. Not a girlfriend. Is she pretty? Emma asked innocently. Michael hesitated. Yes, I suppose she is. But that's not important for work, Emma. Is she nice? A more complicated question. She's very smart and good at her job, he answered diplomatically. Emma seemed to accept this, moving on to a detailed story about the class hamster's escape attempt. Michael listened, grateful for the change of subject, though his mind kept returning to the text messages and the unexpected glimpse of Victoria beyond her professional facade. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos of getting Emma ready for school and himself prepared for work. By the time he walked into Horizon Marketing's glass and steel office building, Michael had convinced himself that Friday night had been a minor blip in his otherwise strictly professional relationship with Victoria Reeves. That conviction lasted until he stepped off the elevator and nearly collided with her in the hallway. Jenkins, she said, her composure fully restored. Her hair was back in its perfect bun, her charcoal suit impeccably tailored, not a hint of vulnerability visible. Yet something had changed, there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes that went beyond their workplace roles. Ms. Reeves, he responded formally, aware of colleagues passing by. My office, please. I need to discuss the Henderson proposal. He followed her to her corner office, with its panoramic views of the city. Once the door closed behind them, her posture relaxed slightly. I wanted to thank you again for Friday, she said, her voice lower. It was not my finest moment. Really, it's fine, Michael assured her. We all have those nights. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Do we? Somehow I can't picture you drunk and incoherent, Jenkins. It's been a while, he admitted. Not much opportunity for that as a single dad. Something softened in her expression. How is Emma? She's good. Made me burn a pancake because I was responding to your text. Victoria's lips curved into a small smile. My apologies to Emma for the sacrificed pancake. There was a moment of silence, not entirely uncomfortable, before Victoria straightened and returned to her professional demeanor. Now, about the Henderson account. I've reviewed your proposal, and I have some thoughts. The meeting proceeded normally, with Victoria offering her usual incisive feedback on his work. Yet Michael couldn't help noticing small differences, the way she seemed to listen more carefully to his explanations, a slight softening around her eyes when he spoke. As he was leaving, she called after him. Jenkins. He turned at the door. Yes? That coffee I mentioned. Are you free Wednesday after work? Michael hesitated, thinking of Emma and his usual weekday routine. Victoria seemed to read his thoughts. Another time if that doesn't work with your schedule. No, Wednesday is fine, he said quickly. My regular sitter can stay a little later. Victoria nodded. Good. The cafe on the corner at 5:30. It wasn't a question, and Michael found himself smiling at her characteristic directness. I'll be there. Wednesday afternoon found Michael unusually distracted. He changed his tie twice before leaving his office for the cafe, then felt ridiculous for doing so. This was just coffee with his boss, a thank you for helping her home after she'd had too much to drink. Nothing more. Yet as he approached the cafe and saw Victoria already seated at a table by the window, he couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation in his stomach. She'd changed from her work suit into dark jeans and a cream-colored blouse, her hair released from its severe bun to fall in dark waves past her shoulders. The transformation was striking. "You changed," he said as he approached the table, immediately feeling foolish for stating the obvious. Victoria looked up, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "I had a meeting across town. Didn't make sense to wear a suit for it." She gestured to the chair across from her. "I ordered you a cappuccino. I've noticed that's what you drink in the morning meetings." Michael sat down, surprised and touched that she'd noticed such a detail. "Thank you. Good memory." "I notice things," she said simply. "It's part of my job." "And what else have you noticed about me?" The question slipped out before he could consider its appropriateness. Victoria studied him for a moment, her head tilted slightly. "You're always 10 minutes early to meetings. You keep a photo of your daughter on your desk but none of your late wife, though you still wear your wedding ring. You're thorough in your work but sometimes too cautious with creative risks. And you're kind, even when there's no professional advantage to being so." Michael stared at her, momentarily speechless. Everything she'd said was accurate, but the level of observation surprised him. "That's quite a list," he finally managed. Victoria shrugged, taking a sip of her tea. "Like I said, I notice things." "And what should I have noticed about you?" he asked, curious now. A small smile played at her lips. "That's not how it works, Jenkins. You tell me what you've observed, and I'll tell you if you're right." Michael considered this challenge, studying her as she waited for his response. "You work harder than anyone else at the company, often staying past 8. You're respected but not particularly close to any of the other directors. You drink green tea, never coffee. You're ambidextrous but favor your right hand for writing. And despite your reputation for being demanding, you've never taken credit for your team's ideas, even when you could have." Victoria's eyebrows raised slightly, genuine surprise crossing her features. "Well, perhaps I'm not the only observer. I notice things too," Michael said, echoing her earlier words. Their coffee extended well past the planned half hour, conversation flowing surprisingly easily once they moved beyond work topics. Victoria, it turned out, had a dry wit that rarely emerged in professional settings. She asked thoughtful questions about Emma, listening intently to his answers without the polite disinterest many showed when he talked about his daughter. "She sounds remarkable," Victoria said after he'd shared a story about Emma's recent school play. "You're doing a good job with her." "I'm trying," Michael admitted. "Some days I feel completely out of my depth." "But you keep showing up," Victoria observed. "That's what matters." The simple validation from someone he respected professionally hit Michael harder than expected. He cleared his throat, suddenly emotional. "What about you? No kids?" A shadow crossed Victoria's face. "No. Never found the right timing." She glanced at her watch, clearly ready to change the subject. "It's getting late. You probably need to get home to Emma." Michael nodded, though he was reluctant to end their conversation. This was nice. "Thank you for the coffee." "Thank you for Friday night," Victoria countered, gathering her purse. "Consider us even." As they walked out of the cafe together, an awkward moment arose. Should they shake hands? Hug? Simply walk away? Michael hesitated, and Victoria solved the dilemma by extending her hand professionally. See you tomorrow, Jenkins. He took her hand, noting how small it felt in his. Michael, he reminded her. Outside of work. She held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Michael, she agreed, before turning and walking toward the parking garage. He watched her go, aware that something had shifted between them, though he couldn't quite define what it was. The next few weeks brought subtle changes to their professional relationship. Victoria began including Michael in higher-level meetings, seeking his input on strategic decisions that would normally be reserved for directors. Their coffee meeting wasn't mentioned again, but occasionally she would stop by his office at the end of the day for brief conversations that weren't entirely work-related. Michael found himself looking forward to these moments, enjoying the glimpses of the woman behind the professional facade. He learned that Victoria had grown up in a small town before putting herself through college, that she played classical piano, and that she had a weakness for old black and white films. Small details that humanized the formidable boss he'd been somewhat intimidated by just months earlier. Colleagues began to notice the shift. Jason cornered him in the break room one afternoon, a knowing smirk on his face. So, you and Reeves, huh? Michael nearly choked on his coffee. What? No. It's not like that. Jason raised his eyebrows. She smiles when you talk in meetings. Victoria Reeves doesn't smile, man. Not unless someone's being fired. We just work well together, Michael insisted, uncomfortable with the implication. Sure, Jason said, clearly unconvinced. Just be careful. Office politics and all that. The conversation left Michael unsettled. He hadn't allowed himself to consider any romantic dimension to his evolving relationship with Victoria. He was still wearing his wedding ring, still thinking of himself as Sarah's husband despite the 3 years that had passed. And Victoria was his boss. Any personal involvement would be complicated at best, professionally disastrous at worst. Yet he couldn't deny the way his pulse quickened when she appeared in his doorway at the end of the day, or how he found himself sharing thoughts with her that he'd never voiced to anyone at work before. The situation came to a head unexpectedly on a Friday evening in late October. Michael was working late, trying to finish a presentation for Monday, when Victoria appeared in his doorway. Still here? She asked, leaning against the frame. She'd already changed from her work clothes into a simple black dress that made Michael momentarily lose his train of thought. Just wrapping up, he managed, gesturing to his computer. You look nice. Going somewhere? Charity dinner for the Arts Council, she said, making a face. Obligatory appearance. I'd rather be home watching Casablanca with a glass of wine. Michael smiled at the reference to her love of classic films. Sounds more appealing than spreadsheets, that's for sure. Victoria hesitated, then stepped further into his office. I have an extra ticket. My assistant was supposed to attend but came down with the flu. Michael stared at her, processing the implicit invitation. I'm not dressed for a charity dinner. He gestured to his work clothes, nice enough for the office but not formal event attire. We could stop by your place so you could change, Victoria suggested, then quickly added, but I understand if you need to get home to Emma. Actually, she's at a sleepover tonight, Michael heard himself saying. First one. I've been checking my phone every 20 minutes expecting a call to pick her up. Victoria smiled. So you're free. And sitting here doing work that could wait until Monday. Put that way, it seemed ridiculous to refuse. Let me just save this and shut down. An hour later, after a quick stop at his apartment to change into the one good suit he owned, Michael found himself at a table in an elegant hotel ballroom, surrounded by the city's elite. Victoria moved through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing him simply as Michael Jenkins, one of our senior managers at Horizon, without any explanation for his presence as her +1. You're good at this, he observed during a rare quiet moment at their table. The networking, the small talk. Victoria sipped her sparkling water, having declined wine after a pointed look from Michael that referenced their first evening outside work. "It's a performance," she said quietly. "One I've perfected over the years." "You don't enjoy it?" She considered the question. "I enjoy the results. The connections made, the deals secured. The actual process." She shrugged. "It's necessary." "And what do you enjoy?" "Besides old movies and piano," he added, referencing their previous conversations. Victoria looked momentarily taken aback by the personal question in this setting. "Quiet mornings. Art museums on weekdays when they're empty. Thunderstorms. Good books." She paused. "Why do you ask?" "Just trying to see past the performance," Michael said honestly. Something vulnerable flickered across her face before she composed herself. "And what do you see?" "Someone who might enjoy Casablanca and wine more than she's letting on." Victoria held his gaze for a long moment before a passing board member interrupted, pulling her into a conversation about donation levels. The moment passed, but Michael felt its weight lingering between them for the rest of the evening. As they left the event, Victoria surprised him by suggesting they walk for a while, despite her heels. The October night was cool but not cold, the city streets quieter than usual. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said as they walked. It was less tedious with company. "High praise," Michael teased. "I'm honored to have made mandatory networking less tedious." Victoria laughed, the sound still rare enough to delight him. "You know what I mean." They walked in comfortable silence for a block before she spoke again. "This is complicated, isn't it?" The directness of the question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" Victoria stopped walking, turning to face him. "This. Us. Whatever is happening here." Michael's heart raced. So he wasn't imagining the shift between them. "Yes," he admitted. "It's complicated. I'm your boss," she stated plainly. "Yes. And you're still grieving your wife." The observation, gentle but accurate, made his chest tighten. "Yes. Though differently than before." Victoria nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I don't want to make your life more complicated, Michael." "What if I don't mind a little complication?" he asked softly. She studied his face in the glow of the streetlight. "Then we need to be very careful. For both our sakes. And for Emma's." The mention of his daughter reminded him of the stakes involved. Any relationship with Victoria wouldn't affect just him, it would impact Emma too. And professionally, the power dynamic between them created obvious problems. "Maybe we should take a step back," he suggested reluctantly. "Keep things professional." Victoria's expression was unreadable. "Is that what you want?" "No," he admitted. "But it might be the sensible thing to do." "I've built my career on sensible decisions," Victoria said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder what I've missed because of it." Before Michael could respond, a taxi pulled up to the curb beside them, a passenger disembarking. Victoria raised her hand to claim it. "Think about it," she said, her professional mask sliding back into place. "I'll see you Monday, Jenkins." He watched the taxi pull away, feeling the evening end on an unresolved note that would linger in his thoughts all weekend. Monday brought an unexpected development. Michael arrived at work to find an email announcing that Victoria would be in Tokyo all week for meetings with potential international clients. The trip had apparently been scheduled for months, but it was the first he'd heard of it. He sent her a brief, professional email wishing her a successful trip, unsure if he should reference their conversation from Friday night. Her reply was equally professional, thanking him and asking him to handle the Henderson presentation in her absence. The week passed slowly. Michael found himself missing their brief interactions and end-of-day conversations more than he'd expected. By Friday, he'd convinced himself that their moment of honesty had been a mistake, one that Victoria was now professionally retreating from. He was putting Emma to bed that night when his phone buzzed with a text. Tokyo is impressive but exhausting. How did the Henderson presentation go? Michael stared at the message from Victoria, a smile spreading across his face despite his attempts to temper his reaction. Who's that, Daddy? Emma asked sleepily from her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals. Just work, he said, setting the phone aside to focus on tucking her in. Time for sleep, pumpkin. Is it your boss lady? Emma persisted, her perceptiveness sometimes startling him. Michael hesitated. Yes, actually. She's in Tokyo for work. That's far away, Emma observed. Is she pretty in real life too? Michael echoed, confused. Emma pointed to his phone. I saw her picture when your phone lit up. Michael realized Victoria's contact info must have appeared with the message. Yes, she is, he answered honestly. Now, sleep time. Love you to the moon and back. And to the stars and home again. Emma finished their nightly ritual, closing her eyes. Once she was asleep, Michael returned to the text, replying. Henderson went well. They've agreed to the revised proposal. Tokyo treating you well? Victoria's response came quickly, efficiently, if not well. Missing decent coffee and conversations that don't require a translator, The admission of missing conversations made him smile. When do you return? Sunday night. Back in the office Monday, Michael hesitated, then typed, I've been thinking about our conversation. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared before her response came through, and I still don't want to take a step back. This time the pause was longer before she replied, we should talk when I return. In person, I'd like that, he wrote back, feeling both nervous and hopeful. Good night, Michael, came her final text of the evening. Good night, Victoria, he responded, setting his phone aside with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty about what Monday would bring. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected complication. Emma woke with a fever, clingy and miserable, clearly in no condition to go to school. Michael called his regular sitter, who was unavailable, then tried his backup, with the same result. After exhausting his limited options, he reluctantly emailed his team and Victoria to let them know he'd be working from home. Victoria's response came within minutes, take care of Emma. Let me know if you need anything, The simple message, prioritizing his daughter over work concerns, touched him deeply. He spent the day balancing laptop work with caring for Emma, who alternated between fitful naps and wanting to be held. By evening, her fever had broken, but she remained clingy and subdued. His phone rang just after 7. Victoria's name appeared on the screen. Hello, he answered, keeping his voice low as Emma dozed against his chest on the couch. How is she? Victoria asked without preamble. Better. Fever's down. Just tired now. Good. There was a pause. I was concerned. The admission warmed him. Thank you. She'll probably be back to normal by tomorrow. Children are remarkably resilient, Victoria said. Another pause. I was hoping we could have that talk today. I know. I'm sorry about the timing. Don't apologize for taking care of your daughter, Michael. Her voice was firm but gentle. That's exactly as it should be. He shifted slightly, careful not to wake Emma. Maybe tomorrow? If she's better? Tomorrow, Victoria agreed. My office, after hours. After they hung up, Michael sat in the dim living room, Emma's warm weight against him, thinking about the conversation to come. Whatever happened between him and Victoria would affect this little person he loved more than anything. The realization was both sobering and clarifying. Emma recovered quickly, as children often do, and was well enough for school the next day. Michael dropped her off with a promise to make her favorite dinner that evening, then headed to the office with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness about his scheduled conversation with Victoria. The workday passed in a blur of meetings and emails. At 5:30, most of the staff began to leave, but Michael remained at his desk, catching up on the work he'd missed the previous day. At 6:15, his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Still here?" He replied, "Yes. Finishing up some reports, My office when you're ready." Michael took a deep breath, saved his work, and walked the short distance to Victoria's corner office. The door was open, but he knocked anyway, a courtesy that made her look up from her computer with a small smile. "Come in," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. As he entered, she rose and closed the door behind him, an unusual action that signaled the personal nature of their conversation. Victoria didn't return to her desk but instead took the chair beside his, turning to face him directly. Without the barrier of the desk between them, the dynamic felt immediately different, less boss and employee, more equals. "How's Emma?" she asked first, her concern genuine. "Much better. Back to her energetic self." Victoria nodded, pleased. Children bounce back quickly. It's a gift adults often lose. "Speaking from experience?" Michael asked, curious about this insight. A shadow crossed her face. "My younger brother was often sick as a child. I remember how quickly he'd recover, while my mother would be exhausted for days afterward." It was a personal detail she'd never shared before, and Michael recognized the significance of her offering it now. "You haven't mentioned a brother before." "He died when I was in college. Car accident." She stated it factually, though Michael could see the old pain behind her composure. "It changed my family. Changed me." "I'm sorry," he said simply, understanding all too well how loss reshapes a life. Victoria acknowledged his sympathy with a slight nod, then straightened, clearly ready to address the reason for their meeting. "About our conversation Friday night." "Before you continue," Michael interrupted gently, "I want you to know I've thought about this carefully. About what it could mean for my career, for your position, for Emma." Victoria studied him. "And your conclusions?" "That some risks are worth taking," he said honestly. "But only if we're both certain." She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I've built my career by avoiding personal complications, Michael. I've sacrificed relationships, family opportunities, countless personal moments for professional advancement." Michael felt his heart sink, interpreting her words as a preamble to rejection. "But," she continued, surprising him, "I find myself unwilling to sacrifice this connection between us without at least exploring what it could be." Hope rose in his chest. "What are you saying, exactly?" Victoria smiled, a rare, genuine expression that transformed her face. "I'm saying I'd like to have dinner with you. A real dinner, not a work event or coffee after hours. Just us, seeing if there's something here worth pursuing despite the complications." "I'd like that," Michael said, returning her smile. "Very much." "There would need to be boundaries," Victoria added, ever practical. "Professional separation. And Emma would need to be your priority. I would never want to interfere with that." The fact that she mentioned his daughter, acknowledging and respecting his most important relationship, only confirmed for Michael that his feelings were justified. "When?" he asked simply. Michael considered the question. "Sometimes. But I think we might have found our way to each other eventually." "Such confidence," she teased, though her tone was warm. "Not confidence," he corrected. "Faith. In whatever brought us together, chance, fate, a company anniversary party with too much champagne." Victoria laughed softly. "Well, I'm grateful, whatever it was." "Me too," Michael said, holding her closer. "For all of it. As they drifted toward sleep, Michael reflected on the tender morning question that had started it all, Victoria's simple text asking if Emma was okay after he'd taken her home. That small moment of humanity, of care extending beyond professional boundaries, had been the first step on a path neither could have anticipated. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unexpected ways, a helping hand on a difficult night, a question asked with genuine concern, a connection formed across the boundaries that once seemed insurmountable. For Michael and Victoria, what had started as a complicated, potentially forbidden attraction had transformed into something beautiful and lasting, a second chance at family, at wholeness, at the kind of love that changes everything. In the quiet of their home, with Emma sleeping peacefully down the hall and Victoria's steady breathing against his chest, Michael knew with absolute certainty that some complications were worth every moment of navigation. Some risks were worth taking. And some loves, even those that begin in the most unlikely circumstances, were simply meant to be. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us how life's most beautiful moments often come when we least expect them. Share in the comments if you've ever experienced an unexpected connection that changed your life. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the smallest moments of kindness.